Thanks, everybody, for joining us today at the Clarke Museum. I'm Susan Doniger. I'm a board member on the Humboldt County Historical Society, and we are presenting a lecture. It's a free lecture in our series, and it's a collaboration between the Humboldt County Library, the Clarke Museum, and the Humboldt County Historical Society. So thank you for coming, and please join any one of those organizations. We really do offer a lot to the public. And without further ado, let me introduce Pete Johnston. He has, over the 16 years, he's dedicated most of his free time to restoring the historic Samoa Shops complex and Roundhouse behind the Samoa Cookhouse. He has a strong commitment to preserving historic structures, and he is actually currently the vice president of the Timber Heritage Association. He served 3 terms as president and continues to be deeply involved in the local museum there. He's been very generous in his offer of storage for a number of collections the Historical Society is trying to work through. And I'm really delighted that you're all here, and we're going to listen to Pete's collection of stories about what Timber Heritage is doing. So thank you, Pete.
Great. So the reason we're talking into the microphones, this is being broadcast online or recorded. Yep. Yes, that's the deal. Anyway, so if you ask me a question, I'm gonna try to remember to repeat it so my little microphone can pick up the question as well. But we'll try and do that after the event. So a little background on myself. My father was a licensed professional forester, and he managed the tract of land just south of Eureka that encompassed the town of Falk. So family outings.
Sorry, we're going to ask you to, it's better for our live stream.
Test. Is it broadcasting here or?
Well, it's just for the general public. Do you guys need to hear it through the speakers?
I think it's on.
Yeah, I don't know. Test. I'm not sure if it's
on, yeah.
I'll try and talk loud. Anyway, so my father managed this tract of land with the town of Falk, so family outings, Boy Scout weekends, spent a lot of time out milling around the old town of Falk. Remember the general store, walking across the trestles, touring the sawmill with the big overhead belts and the big saws and the sawdust chutes we would slide down. Just tons and tons of memories of the old town of Falk in the 60s and 70s. Mother Nature and decay led to the demise of most of the buildings, and the rest of them were really unsafe, so they had to knock the rest of the buildings down in the 80s. Anyway, that just, that ghost town that was a big part of my life growing up just kind of sparked my interest in logging history and local history, and that's when I became so passionate about it. I discovered the Timber Heritage Association in like the year 2000 with their great newsletter that I found, and started helping the organization out at their Samoa Shops. Went to a few board meetings, ended up on the board, fell asleep at a board meeting, woke up president. Anyway, the rest is history. It's been a big part of my life the last 20 years or so. Timber Heritage Association started in the 70s. A group of passionate, history-loving individuals started amassing things at Fort Humboldt. Bill Fahey and others, our founding fathers, started a collection at Fort Humboldt, and it grew from there. So into what it is today. So the redwood industry, let's see if I'm hitting the right button here. The redwood industry is, it's kind of legendary. The huge logs just overcoming with hand tools and oxen and steam train power when available. It's just an amazing legacy of what they did to bring timber to market. They overcame some huge challenges, as you can see here, where they actually welded 2 crosscut saws together to fall this big giant. And this was all in the name of feeding a growing country 2x4s, to build home structures, to build San Francisco twice. And redwood lumber was shipped, even in the early 1900s, was shipped all over the world out of the port of Humboldt Bay. Hawaii, Polynesia, Australia. There's still houses today built out of redwood from Humboldt County. So back to Fort Humboldt. This is a little Falk locomotive from Fort Humboldt. And Timber Heritage Association volunteers have been giving rides safely, no accidents, for almost 40 years up there at Fort Humboldt. Very popular. The town of Eureka was kind of the central hub of the timber and logging industry, and has many innovations. This is just a little shot of the housing of a local drag saw company that cast the name of their hometown right in the aluminum casting. But so many inventions. The steam donkey was invented here, the drag saw. People tell me the chainsaw was invented here locally. So the predecessor to Timber Heritage was the North Coast Logging Interpretive Association, and they had quite a collection at Fort Humboldt, but this was their biggest item to salvage was the number 15 Hammond locomotive from Sequoia Park. And we're going to talk some more about that a little later on, that particular locomotive. But you can see the effort it takes to move these things. And so this was, I think 1980, it got moved out of Sequoia Park, moved to Redwood Acres, got kicked out of Redwood Acres, and moved the entire collection to Glendale out by Blue Lake. And then was stored, all the collection was stored at Glendale for years. We do have a couple pictures of the Glendale site. And when you're an organization like this, you become a magnet for any logger or anybody who finds something neat, cool, rusty, big, heavy to move. Let's give it to Timber Heritage Association. So they bought many of the locomotives that are in our collection. Quite a few got donated, along with steam donkeys, chainsaws, drag saws, chains, hooks, every logging paraphernalia known to man. Another shot of Glendale. You can see the line of locomotives. Another shot of Glendale. I think this was an open house event. So in year 2000, Mike Kellogg, Mike, hold your hand up over here. Mike Kellogg was a very integral member of Timber Heritage Association. Mike started the Whistlepunk newsletter, and this just really raised the level of professionalism in timber heritage, and it's been a stalwart part of our organization ever since. I encourage you to pick up one of these, either some past newsletters, but I'm sure I have at least one for everybody to share. It's a big part of what got me into the organization, was finding the newsletter. Hey, this looks cool. Boy, was I a sucker. A lot of people remember the old inside track car that used to live in, it was a gift shop in Old Town Eureka. Who are you going to give it to when you need to get it out of there? Give it to Timber Heritage. Gave it to us. We worked with the railroad to hitch it up and move it out to, it now still lives behind the eucalyptus trees out at Arcata Redwood. So all this time, Timber Heritage has been looking for a permanent home, and this Hammond Lumber Company, and over here in this area here is our vast, we have about 40,000 square feet of shop space in some of these old buildings here. And this was the world's second largest sawmill, from what I've been told. Of course, Pacific Lumber down in Scotia was the largest. So it was a massive complex. Of course, the mill is all gone. All the housing is still out there. Let's see, from this angle it's hard to see. The cookhouse is right up on the bluff over here, overlooking our site. So 1947, you can see the Roundhouse, see this building built on a radius. So this is our collection of shops, and our 9-acre site is about this kind of footprint here. So we moved into the shops in 2007. They were beat up, abandoned, roofs caving in, everything painted a gross, ugly yellow. And this is us starting to move our collection into the Samoa Shops. We, of course, secured the doors and boarded up the windows as a stopgap measure, but you'll see in succeeding pictures we have done a lot of work on these old buildings. There's a locomotive coming from Glendale, getting ready to enter the Roundhouse. So how do you move these things? A lot of money. Cranes at Glendale to load them, lowboy truck from Glendale to Samoa, and then more cranes at Samoa waiting to unload. It was a massive endeavor. Mike, I don't know if we ever had a dollar figure on what it cost to move our collection from, it was...
We had lots of donations.
Tens of thousands for all the cranes. We borrowed the cat loader from down the peninsula. One of our locomotives. Another one of our locomotives. This is the Pacific Lumber Company 29. This picture was taken down in Scotia coming out of their roundhouse, but it's now in our roundhouse. I like this picture. The gentleman in the middle is Marcus Brown. He was the president of Timber Heritage for many years before I was, and he was extremely passionate, put heart and soul into the organization, and was an amazing vocal advocate for railroad around the bay and beyond. So here's that locomotive that I first showed you getting loaded up onto a lowboy from Sequoia Park. So this is a Hammond number 15 shown in front of the Roundhouse. This is probably in the early 50s. So this locomotive was purchased in 1939 by Hammond Lumber, ran between Cornell and Humboldt Bay hauling logs. In the early 50s, when logging trucks started replacing locomotives, this was parked right here, and that's what this picture is. It's parked on the side of the Roundhouse. It saw occasional duty, and of course then the big diesel locomotives started coming in and making the steam obsolete. So it was donated to the city of Eureka, put into public display at Sequoia Park, given to Timber Heritage, moved to Redwood Acres, moved to Glendale, and here it is getting moved back to Samoa, back to its original home, where it occupies the center stall of the Roundhouse. So it's been a huge endeavor. You can kind of see the lengths we go to preserve these things. It's a pretty fun thing to be a part of. What do they say? One of the keys to success is getting involved in something bigger than yourself. Another one of our locomotives. Looks like it's being unloaded off a lowboy there. And there it is in front of the Roundhouse, waiting to get pushed into the stall. So 2009, the Roundhouse is full. There's a bunch of volunteers. I think I'm in there somewhere. That was after we put the last locomotive in the stall. Another item that was donated to us, actually purchased, I guess, by Marcus Brown in memory of his mother. This fun little caboose was down at Pacific Lumber. It had obstacles on either end, big obstacles, and it had power lines going right over the top of it, and nobody could figure out how to move it. So a band of Timber Heritage volunteers went down there with a bunch of rail and ties and jacks and pulleys, and son of a gun if they didn't move it, and it showed up at Samoa. So, and we have that pretty much fully restored these days. Another item we have at Samoa. This is one of the first diesel locomotives that came to Humboldt County. This was sold to an outfit back east, and they needed more power, so they put two brand new Caterpillar diesel engines in it. It wasn't heavy enough for their operation, so they welded big, thick 2-inch metal plates to the deck. It still wasn't heavy enough, so they called us. They said, "You want to buy this thing?" So we shipped it back from back east. Loaded it, unloaded it, had to come by rail and then lowboy truck. And once it showed up at Samoa, that's what happens when you turn Timber Heritage volunteers loose. It was all volunteer labor that that scraped it, sanded it, primed it, painted it. So we've done a lot of work over the years. Another great donation, there's a shot of a railroad car coming through the Richardson's Grove. There was a family down in Santa Rosa who had 5 cars, I think, made the move. Anyway, they were restoring these beautiful cars, dining car, parlor car, business car, and a couple other associated cars, restoring them so they could start their own tourist railroad. And the husband was having health problems, so they looked up and down the West Coast at which organization they could donate these beautiful cars to, and they chose us. So that was like a $250,000 donation to our group. And the inside of these cars are stunning. They are beautiful. There's the dining car. There's one of our volunteers, Bill Cozy, there on the right. He's recently passed away. We miss him. Dining car. They're just beautiful. They're ugly as heck on the outside. We haven't gotten to the exterior restoration yet, but they are beautiful cars. Business car. As I say, we're kind of a magnet for all things rail related. This whole thing, believe it or not, is built of cardboard. And Rob Arkley, local businessman, had this built by a contractor for a Polar Express themed Christmas party. And what do you do with a cardboard locomotive when you're done with it? Call Timber Heritage. Sure, we'll take it. So we've had it at our events. We put it on a trailer, and it's very lightweight, easy to move. Unlike everything else we own, this one's easy to move. So a big part of my life since 2007 has been doing these work parties at Samoa. So this is one of the aging buildings at Samoa. This is an amazing before picture. If you see daylight, it means that the wall or the roof is missing from that location. That should be a roof, but yeah, it looks like it has a few leaks. There's one of the roofs that we had facing us when we moved into the Samoa Shops. There's another one of the roofs, literally on the verge of collapse. I think if these things had gone another few years, that the roofs would cave in and the walls would follow. So we really kind of saved them just in time. That should be a roof, but it's not. So the first structure we tackled out there was the 1893 Roundhouse. You can see the scale of the building with the human on the roof. Replacing rotten siding, there's myself and I think Gary Boughton working on some siding repairs. Somebody commented, "Look, Pete, looks like your hair is black in that picture. What happened?" Here's one of our roofing days, volunteer labor up there, scraping the roof off, stepping through the rotten boards. That's got a little exciting. One of the fun things we uncovered, I don't know if it's 11007 or 111007, but some carpenter in 1907, as he put the last shingle on, he took out his yellow crayon and wrote a date on the sheathing board before he roofed over it. And when we were undoing the roofing, we discovered that date. So we all signed our names and dated it and covered it back up with the new layer of roofing. Another Samoa work party. You can see the roof in the foreground where we had to replace majority of the rafters that had rotten. And wow, these buildings are ugly. Wait till you see the pictures of them now. Mother Nature was encroaching from the hillside between us and the Samoa Cookhouse. The blackberry vines were 12 feet tall and encroached onto the building. It was quite a struggle sawing through all that. Another great work party we had was the Humboldt Builders Exchange came out. I think we had 62 volunteers that day. And in one day, we figured we did about $15,000 worth of work. Builders Exchange contractors brought out all their equipment, all their highly skilled help. You can see Pierre there in the foreground. I don't know if most everybody knows Pierre here locally. This is part of the Builders Exchange work party. Yeah, it was Barry Smith's Construction, John Vandermolen. There's a lot of local builders. We had a big barbecue and fed them all barbecue and beer and whatever we could do to keep that group happy. That's part of the Builders Exchange. Another work party on our car barn. So not everybody's a carpenter or a roofer, so we have a lot of mechanic types that they could give a hoot about the buildings, but they want to restore all the old equipment, etc. We have an amazing group of volunteers, and everybody kind of has their specialty. One of our recent volunteers, Sebastian, and his specialty is welding. He loves to come out and weld whatever we need to weld. So here's some before pictures. This is a blacksmith shop, end of the building. That is definitely a before picture. You can see these buildings were really on the verge of collapse. You can see a section of roof right there that did collapse. We didn't get to that one in time, so we had to rebuild it from scratch. But there's the same structure with a shiny new roof, awaiting siding repairs. And there it is after siding and paint, ready for the next 100 years. So we are really proud of the work we've done on these buildings to restore them. A lot of us would work Saturdays at the shops and Tuesday nights. I don't know why we picked Tuesday nights, but we'd meet out there after work and go until dark. I better turn this off. Train whistle's appropriate though, isn't it? Here's a work party. This gentleman in the middle here, Dexter, we recently lost him. He just passed away at about, I think he was 79. He put in about 15 years, and of course, he'd help you with anything, but his specialty was electrical. He was a retired Caltrans electrician. But whoever showed up, whoever was working, needed help, he'd jump in. And there we are on the top of the roof, sunset on a Tuesday night. There's a before picture of the machine shop, and there's an after. Fresh paint, fresh windows, trim. Still a few details here and there. Here's the Roundhouse, 1930s. Roundhouse 2009, right after we moved our locomotive in. And there it is today with a coat of paint. And there it is, opened up during one of our events. It's kind of the pride of our fleet, if you will, is the 1893 Roundhouse. There used to be 400 of these roundhouses on the West Coast. And when trains went away and diesel trucks came in to replace them, they didn't want these funny round buildings. They weren't real efficient. They were kind of too weird and didn't really fit the diesel trucks. And so all of them were torn down except two. There's one down in Jamestown in Sonoma County, Sonoma, and ours is the oldest, so we're really proud of it. For all of our efforts, we couldn't save them all. So this big building here, Mike, how many rail cars would that fit end to end?
28.
28 rail, just give you an idea of how big that structure is. A train of 28 flat cars could enter that building and be loaded out of the weather. They would load the lumber on them out of the weather and then head south to San Francisco and beyond. So,
I think they use boxcars and load.
oh, boxcars. Oh, that's right. Boxcars had to be hand loaded. All right. So when we got to taking over our little section, there was about a 300-foot piece of this building still left here on the wharf, and we couldn't save it. It wasn't ours. It wasn't part of our leased area, but it started falling down, and then they had to hire a local contractor to take it down the rest of the way. So a piece of history that is no more. Events and festivities. One of the big things we do is run our little speeder car. This is that speeder car after it got drug out of the blackberries and restored by Jerry Tomzak, Carl Casal, and many other Timber Heritage volunteers. Here they are out on a track clearing party. There is a railroad here. You can see a little piece of track right there. They are hacking through the brush. This is what we have our volunteers do. Passionate volunteers who wanted to see our little speeder on the rails. So they hacked through the jungle. Here's our current president, Sean Mitchell. A few guys from the county. I think, yeah, there's Joseph, another one of our new board members. Some of the tracks being cleared down in Lolita. We would hire High Rock inmate crews. These aren't High Rock inmate crews. Those are Timber Heritage volunteers. I think that shot's out at Samoa. There it is on the tracks in Old Town, Eureka. Probably a 4th of July. Along the shores of Humboldt Bay. Super popular. Whenever we bring that little speeder out, I mean, the people just show up in droves. For the longest time, I couldn't understand it, and I thought our numbers would taper off. Actually, the more we run it, the more people ride it. Our numbers keep going up. So it's becoming very well known and quite popular. Another speeder operation. Going across the Slough Bridge. Those with a sharp eye will notice we photoshopped out the graffiti on the bottom bridge girder. These are my kids, Colton and Kelly, riding a rail bike, a rail runner. And we've recently purchased one. We're still waiting on it to be delivered on a slow boat from wherever it's coming from, Madagascar or something. Anyway, these have proven extremely popular across the nation. And if we get the rights to run on the rails from the Great Redwood Trail Association, we'd like to start a fleet of these rail bikes. More speeder operations downtown, 4th of July. 4th of July. There's a Carson Mansion, nice picture. 4th of July, Samoa Bridge. Lolita Tunnel, this was a ride I helped start down in Lolita, working with the Lolita Chamber of Commerce. I knew there was a tunnel north of Lolita, so I talked to Chamber of Commerce. I said, if you guys clear the tracks, we'll bring our speeder down and have a town celebration. When we finally, they got the tracks cleared, we showed up with our speeder, and the local Chamber of Commerce said it was the biggest thing to hit their town in 27 years. We had thousands of people there. And every time we bring it to Lolita, we get the same crowds. There was a washout between the downtown and the tunnel, so it shortened the ride considerably. We haven't been down there in a couple of years, but I hope we go back. There's the Lolita Trestle just south of the downtown area of Lolita. Speeder rides in Fortuna, part of the apple harvest days. I think this is a shot of the speeder crew. I think this was our last ride just this past fall. You can see smiling faces. It's a fun thing to be a part of. We love that little speeder so much, we take it out and enter it in parades. I think that's Pony Express Days, Rhododendron Parade, Truckers Parade, Santa Claus. More Truckers Parades, always fun and popular. Rhododendron Parade. Sometimes we let the speeder stay home and we'll load a steam donkey up for the Rhododendron Parade. Humboldt's best steamy experience. Rhododendron Parade. Then we take our float up to Fort Humboldt after the Rhododendron Parade, where we have a logging exhibition, and of course run the little steam engines up there and make a weekend of it. If anybody knows the whereabouts of this trailer used to live out in front of Kmart. And state park, but the trailer belongs to us. State parks put their billboard on it, and we tacked our signs along with the Maritime Museum, put their signs on the sides. Anyway, recently the trailer disappeared. And Papa and Barkley, I think, is the owners of Kmart now. They gave us a clue as to where it might be, but we're still pursuing. Bear Harbor locomotive up at Fort Humboldt. Another thing that was fun at Fort Humboldt, everybody knows Thomas the Train and how popular that is with kids. Well, somebody, I forget who, set up a Thomas the Train event at Fort Humboldt, and they didn't know what to expect. Over 2,500 people showed up to Fort Humboldt. That's how popular Thomas the Train is. We had a Timber Heritage booth there selling all the swag for the event. Quite fun. So what else do we do? This is one of our big fundraisers. We actually have one coming up. I'll give you all a poster and a ticket order form at the end of the presentation. Many of you in the audience here have gotten sucked in as volunteers to help us out at these events. Anyway, this year's event is coming up, Roundhouse Rendezvous. It's a fun dinner auction, great fundraiser for us. We have it at the Sequoia Conference Center, beautiful building. Fun event. It's a great place to have a good fundraiser like that. Something else we do in the summertime out at Samoa, have a big barbecue, open house, live music. We call it SOAR, Salmon, Oysters, Ales, and Rails. It's always kind of the highlight of our summer to get to show off our shops, and we'll have vendors out there. Car clubs come out. Hard-working volunteers. On the right is Mike Kellogg's wife, Shar. These are some past year's events. I can tell they're past years because the buildings are still puke yellow. There's my wife in the middle and a couple of smiling friends. Wonder what's in those glasses. There's my wife and I. Humboldt Bay Rowing Association will get those kids out. They bake all kinds of desserts, and they do the desserts for the event. Now here's the buildings looking a little better. Red paint, new windows just last year probably, yeah. So you can see the improvement in the looks of the buildings. It's pretty impressive. There's my wife and a few of her cohorts. Kirk, there's Suzette, right? Some other friends and their grandkids. More car clubs come out after our summer barbecue. And in the background, you'll see a caboose and a locomotive. And that is the first train to run in Humboldt County since 2001, I think Sean said, was the last time a train of any kind ran in Humboldt County. So that's on our little private spur on our property. It's not out on the main line. But yeah, we want to build more tracks on the property, just as a what if something happens to our right to run on the rails. Happy families on the speeder ride. A few other Timber Heritage volunteers. Rex Bone, Larry Doss, and myself. We have the Boy Scouts out. We call the Boy Scouts out to help with parking at our events. And that gentleman on the far left is my son, who now towers over me. So this was a few years ago. There's Bill Cozy. We were auctioning off a little brass Caterpillar tractor built by a local artist. There's the Good Old Boy Club. More car shows. Oh, something, a little side venture we got called off. That's a Eureka train depot down in Old Town. Still there, kind of close to the balloon tract. And the North Coast Rail Authority called and said, hey, the city says this is a public nuisance. We have to get everything out of there and board it up. So Timber Heritage volunteers showed up with empty trucks and vans and took all the files and papers and maps and, really historical stuff out of the building and storing it out at Samoa. We boarded the structure up for them and just helping out our landlord. What else do we do? So this is a shot of the logging conference. We'll take our little locomotives and a little passenger trailer out to the logging conference. We give rides to how many school kids in a day, Mike?
It's over 1,000.
Over 1,000 school kids come out for their field trip and ride the locomotive. This is my picture I call, we're not just a bunch of old white guys. This is Linda Nesbitt. She's been a great volunteer over the years. She'll volunteer as fireman on the locomotives as we're running them, and she's multi-talented, helps out with lots of other things. There's the Bear Harbor locomotive under steam at Fort Humboldt. Another little side thing we did, somebody wanted this water tower removed from their property in Neeland. We thought it'd be really cool to have a historic wooden water tower at Samoa. So we salvaged this water tower, took it down in pieces. There's the volunteer crew on a Sunday, I believe. Denny Hess, I don't know if that name rings a bell, owned Braycut International for years and years. And I knew he had a collection of logging stuff and locomotives, and I kept bugging him for years. I'd call him like every other year, hey, Denny, you ready to donate that stuff yet? And son of a gun, if he didn't call me, he said, Pete, come get it. It was an amazing collection of woodsman's tools, logging tools, crosscut saws, drag saws, chainsaws with, at least an 8-foot bar. Yeah, it was a fun collection. So we're not all railroad. We're a lot of timber as well. I think this is a shot of the Corbell mill years ago before they closed. So documenting an oral histories. One of our members does oral histories of notable local timber people. This is a interesting tale. I'll try to keep it short. These pattern molds were stored in a loft down at Pacific Lumber down in Scotia. And whenever they needed a part for the sawmill, they would have a carpenter build a wooden replica of this part to send to Eureka Foundry to have an identical piece cast out of cast steel or cast iron. And anyway, Pacific Lumber called us, said, come get these things. They look like they belong with you. So anyway, there's a very dirty crew. All these things were covered with an inch of black dust that we had to move and load up on trailers. But some really fun artifacts. It looks like metal, but it's actually a piece of wood, handmade as a replica so they could cast the identical part in steel. So we have thousands of those things. We're still trying to figure out how to display them. Now there's a man-sized wrench if I ever did see one. A couple little slides. The railroad had a 100-year anniversary back in 2014, so we did a fun little event for that. We brought the Falk locomotive right on the street out in front and set it up for the day and closed off the street. Had a little presentation with the native sons. Thought that'd be a good photo op, the Falk locomotive in front of the Clarke. One of our members, Chet Ogan. So whenever we play with our big heavy things, it requires lowboy trucks, street closures, winches, chains, volunteers. It's no small feat. It's not like showing up with a card table and putting up a display. It's kind of a commitment. Another something we were involved in, this is the Scotia collection, we call it. There used to be this old Heisler locomotive on public display down in Scotia. The locomotive was purchased by a preservation group down in Mill Valley, because that's actually where the locomotive started its life, was on the Mount Tamalpais Railroad. Anyway, everything else, there was a huge yarder, bunch of other logging artifacts as part of that display. Everything else was donated to us, but once again, we showed up with a bunch of Timber Heritage volunteers and helped out. And I believe this is the big yarder awaiting reassembly at Samoa. It's a huge, massive steam winch, if you will. Here's a picture of our roundhouse. Looks like we have one of the locomotives backed outside so that we could paint. We had to paint the inside as part of the remediation process. Part of the purchase agreement was that we do all the remediation of the lead-based paint inside and outside all of these buildings. It was $1 million worth of remediation that we did, mainly with volunteers. They did hire me. I'm a licensed contractor, so they could hire me, and I did a fair amount of it myself. But painting these buildings inside and out was a Herculean task. Some of our old buildings, some of the insides. There's a building or two that aren't open to the public, that are pretty much just volunteer-only spaces, our workspace. And they had no flaking lead paint, so we told the remediation people there's no need to paint these, because there was no exposure to the public, and they agreed. So in some regard, it's kind of saving the patina of the building, if you will. Parts of the Samoa site are looking more and more like a museum. Drag saw collection. We have steam engines, steam donkeys, steam winches, sawmill motors, cranes, forklifts. This is a big wheel apparatus that got towed behind a Caterpillar tractor to help drag the logs out to the log landings. Yeah, this is just some of our equipment, small bit of it. Something else we've been involved in, if anybody who rides or walks on the new waterfront trail, there is so much timber history along the waterfront that all these plaques, you look in the fine print on the bottom, thank you to Timber Heritage Association, and we provide a lot of the pictures and the text for these signs along the bay. A lot of great history. This was a Chamber of Commerce mixer out at the Timber Heritage Shops. It's a great place to have a public event. Not my favorite shot, but something else we do. The Eureka Police Department realizes that Timber Heritage, we're the only people who have these specialized high rail pickups that can run on the road or the rails. And so they call us when they want to do a homeless cleanup. And as you can see, we do much more than just drive the pickup. Our volunteers jump out and right there with the EPD to help clean up those homeless encampments. It's just kind of heartbreaking to see the trash that's involved in those. There's a loaded high rail ready to go to the dump. Something else we've done in the past, the sand dune, what's it called? Sand dune competition at Manila Beach. I'm trying to think of what it's exactly called. Anyway, there's the Bear Harbor and a little passenger car behind it. Little choo-choo on the sand. We've been known to man the telephones at Keat TV just for fun, get the word out about our events. We've been an integral part of providing pictures and information for these local authors. This is one of my favorites, the one about Falk, when Julie Clarke, who wrote the book, was doing all her research, and I'd gotten to know her quite well over the years, and she knows my passion for the town of Falk. Anyway, she let me write a chapter introduction in there, so that was pretty cool. We've teamed up with Dick Taylor Chocolates for a special run of chocolates. That was kind of fun. Made great Christmas presents. A little volunteer meeting at Samoa Cookhouse. Boy, we miss the cookhouse. It's such an integral part of our site. I mean, the cookhouse fed the mill workers, the loggers, everybody for the Hammond Mill complex. The cookhouse was kind of the hub. It's a real shame to have it closed down. We had a great meeting recently with the individual who's in charge of Danco on the Samoa Peninsula, and he said it's a tough one. The building needs so much work, the kitchen needs so much work. So anyway, we are definitely encouraging them to pursue the reopening. Here's our newspaper slide. Something else we've done is provide Humboldt County Historical Society had a huge, like 20 pallets worth of newspapers that were going to get tossed if they didn't get organized and scanned, etc. So they needed a huge indoor area to spread out all these newspapers, and there's their volunteer crew and Steve Lazar on the far right, who headed up the operation. But it was a good partnership, and the newspapers are still out there, all palletized and organized and labeled and boxed, but they still take up a pretty big footprint. We're working with them to find a long-term solution. School field trip, that was a high school field trip. Fun little item, I'll try and keep it short. I could talk all day on this. This was a trolley that one of our members found on the internet. We talked with the Eureka Lodging Alliance. They said, great, put that thing on the tracks of Old Town. Here's the money to buy it. So we had to go to British Columbia to buy it. Had a heck of a time getting it across the border. Got it back to Samoa. Found out it had zero drivetrain, no motor. It was never meant to be a motorized unit. It was just it was in a Netflix movie. Lemony Snicket's Series of Unfortunate Events. This is the trolley from that movie. So it's really cute. It's got the patina. It was made by somebody who took a lot of time and effort for a movie prop. But it was a lot of time and effort for Bernie. This is Bernie Christine. He worked, I want to say, over a year and a half, putting a little Honda motor in it, all the hydraulics. It was a monumental effort to make it functional. There's Bernie working on something. Anyway, we'd love to see that thing putting up and down the streets of Old Town. Something else we just started this year in concert with the North Coast Repertory Theater, and the Clarke Museum was the Haunted Rail Tour. And that was out at Samoa. Many of you are familiar with it. Anyway, the North Coast Repertory Theater took our Samoa Shops, Roundhouse, turned it into a haunted house. And it was wildly popular. I think over 2,200 people attended over the 6 or 7 nights we had it open. There on the far right, that's our new president, Sean Mitchell. There's a great shot of the nighttime crowds. Parking was an issue. People moving was an issue. Bathrooms were an issue. We were just overwhelmed with the amount of people who wanted a haunted house experience. It was very successful and very financially successful for all 3 organizations. This was donated to us by one of my neighbors. We call it the Queen Mary. It's a high rail Suburban. You can see it's made to run on the rails or on the road. And several of our volunteers, along with the Eureka High Auto Shop, have taken that under their wing and given it a nice restoration. Something else we've started the last couple of years, Santa trains and candy canes. Where's Santa? Hold your hand up. There's Santa. Jack Jensen does a great job as Santa. And this is a free event to the public. This last year we had over 1,000 people attend. It's a one-day event. Goes on for 3 or 4 hours. But it's just a chance to get your picture taken with Santa Claus in front of a train. We have free hot chocolate, cookies, activities for the kids, speeder rides, and it's just a free, fun thing we do for the community. There's our President Sean and his wife Kat, and Santa. Kids of all ages. There's some of my wife's high school students. I need you to help me, but you got to wear this stupid outfit. Everybody's like, how did you get those boys to wear those outfits? I think this family got the Dress Best Award. Waiting for Santa. There's Sean in the speeder. There's the high school group in the trolley, looks like. And now into the future. Our property purchase from the Harbor District is completed. We need to address some planning and zoning issues and the County of Humboldt General Plan update. We're not zoned in that property for a museum yet. But what it's all geared towards is a Timber Heritage Museum at Samoa. And if you recall that same image from 1947, you can see the Roundhouse and the neighboring buildings. And there it is today, new shiny roofs on everything. We think the addition of a Timber Heritage Museum in conjunction with the Samoa Cookhouse and the Maritime Museum and the Mataket and an excursion train would be a huge tourist draw. Chamber of Commerce numbers say 2.1 million tourists go up and down 101 every year to see the redwoods. And if we can get a small percentage of those to come to Samoa, ride an excursion train, eat at the local restaurants, shop at the gift store, stay in the motel for a night and a day, and share our local history. We think that'd be a great draw. So, but wait, there's more. And I could talk all day on the Great Redwood Trail, the rail banking, the rails being removed between Eureka and Arcata. Anyway, we have spent hundreds of hours with the Surface Transportation Board, Federal Railroad Administration, the Great Redwood Trail Association, North Coast Rail Association, staggering amount of hours working with them to show them that we are serious about this excursion train. Our little speeder that we bring out every other weekend from June to September, we gave 4,000 rides last year. And not all of them locals. A lot of them hear about it on the internet. They're coming over from Redding, Chico, etc., getting out of the heat. So, So yeah, the tracts around the bay, and so much of it between all the tracts around Eureka, the Eureka Waterfront Trail has all been built rail with trail. The sections through Arcata have been built rail with trail. The new section between Breakhut and Target that they're working on right now is all being built rail with trail. So that allows, it allows everybody to play on that corridor, get out, enjoy nature, rather than rail to trail, where the rail is actually removed and converted to trail use. I threw this little picture in. This is a what do they call it? Peninsula Community Collaborative meeting. They had an on-site meeting there in front of the cookhouse and did some walking on the rail corridor. But it's kind of a splinter group of pro-peninsula advocates. And we heard they were, the scuttlebutt was that they wanted to rip the tracks out to build the trail. So we started attending their meetings, and we're slowly turning their mindset into rail with trail. Here's an excursion train from the past. This is our number 15 back in the 1960s, hauling an excursion train from Grinnell to Samoa, just like they haul their logs during the week. Well, they hauled excursion trains on the weekends. Here's from the 1970s. That's our number 7 Arcata Mad River locomotive, which is in our Roundhouse. And it's a towing excursion train from Blue Lake to Arcata and back. And that's the little low trestle there at Glendale. That's parts of it are still standing. So what are we going to run around Humboldt Bay? Well, there's our motive power, our beloved 101 locomotive. And remember those beautiful cars we have stored at Samoa. So I got to ask you, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? As you can see, there is clearly a light at the end of the tunnel for an excursion train on Humboldt Bay and a Timber Heritage Museum. So much as our ancestors, overcame some huge obstacles, they had to innovate, they had to work hard. I think our group has proved its mettle. We're working very hard on many fronts, and we want to pull off some big things for the Humboldt Bay region. And this will be a big part of it, the Humboldt Bay Scenic Railroad Shoreline Special. And I like this slide. This was a picture of one of our work parties during COVID. You can see for the picture, we're like, okay, spread out, make it look like we're 6 feet apart. Anyway, this was just a small sampling of, when we put the word out, hey, let's do a work party. I think we were working on the foundation and siding of this particular building, the car barn. And I mean, you can see the people who show up, and they're passionate. They're all working for a cause. We're very lucky. We have some really fun things to work on, and some fun things to share with the rest of the world. So is the sun setting on the local railroad, or is the sun rising on the local railroad? I'd like to think that's a sunrise, and there's a rosy future ahead. So thank you for joining me. I would love to answer any questions if I could. Let me get a drink of water. I hope you all enjoyed it. Questions? Any questions about railroad, Samoa, town of Falk? What else? The Elk River Scout Camp.
What is left out there at that area?
At Falk?
At the
Elk River Scout Camp is still maintained by the local Boy Scouts. I'm on the camp committee, of course. The mess hall, the kitchen, several bunkhouses are still there, lovingly maintained, roofed, painted, windows repaired. And out in the meadow, there's still a bathroom and a wash station. And as long as we keep roofs on them, they're all old growth redwood, they'll be there another 100 years. Yeah, those buildings were built in the late 20s, like 1929, 1930. And so they're, as far as local timber heritage goes, is probably one of the later logging camps to be built, because once Model A vehicles and dependable transportation, and the guys could go home at night. They didn't have to live out in the woods. So, yes.
So I've been inside the rail cars that are out on the peninsula, and they are beautiful on the inside. But I did wonder at the time, how rail ready is the structure itself? I mean, is it
The car itself?
Right. I mean, do the wheels go round and round?
Yes, you're right. And everything would have to go through an FRA, a Federal Railroad Administration inspection. The brakes got to work, the wheels got to go round and round. There is the open nature of the vestibules. I mean, they're open to the weather, and they're in rough shape. But we've seen other tourist railroads with cars in much worse shape than ours. Ours are in pretty cherry shape compared to some. So we have full confidence that we can make them Yep, rail ready and pass inspection, and a beautiful shiny coat of paint on the outside. Yes.
When you're talking excursion line, so what kind of excursion trip do you foresee? I mean, length of time that people will be able to stay on it, you know, where the route will take it, and just those particulars of how the whole trip aspect of it will function for the passenger.
It's a very good question. Our initial goal for years and years has been Samoa to Eureka. That's an 18-mile route. If you can imagine a train car of 200 passengers stopping on First Street in Old Town and dispersing all those passengers right down the street from here to all the stores and storefronts, you know, cruise ship passengers or whatever, and then either take the Matticat from Eureka back to Samoa, get a little, complete the circuit, or they can ride the train back. So that's an end goal that we realize we're years away from. What we've found, and what other tourist railroads have found, is that sometimes shorter is better. The skunk train down in Fort Bragg had a tunnel collapse. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. They had a tunnel collapse 3 miles from Fort Bragg up Pudding Creek, and had a tunnel collapse. Well, they're not in a real big hurry to fix that tunnel. They found that the little 3-mile run, they built a little area to stop and hang out at the end of the ride. But a family of 4 coming into, say, Eureka from out of the area, they don't want an 8-hour excursion. Right. They want a half day. What can we do in a half day and go see the redwoods, go up to Oric the rest of the day or something? So our run, 5 or 6 miles from Samoa to Arcata, there's still a Y track, a large Y track, a place to turn a train around. Right. In Arcata. Stop at the Creamery District, you know, maybe a walk or a little shuttle bus to the plaza and back. You know, go get another load and make several small trips a day. But the skunk train, what they've noticed is more passengers with a little, you know, they used to do an 18-mile run or whatever and, you know, take all day. Right. And with the shorter run, it's less track maintenance, more trips, more people get to experience the train, more money. Yeah, so sometimes shorter is better. So Paul, you were asking about the tracks that got removed between Braycut and Target, or between Braycut and Arcata Redwood. They removed 6,600 feet of tracks off the railroad berm. And that was a joint effort between the trail people and Caltrans to raise that railroad berm. They're going to raise it 2 feet. I think they kind of started, but they haven't raised it. So the trail is still going to be built between the freeway and the railroad. It's still going to be built there. But everybody, Caltrans included, because the bay has overtopped that. Right. Kind of the railroad is an unofficial levee in that area. And it's actually flooded 101 before when the wind's blowing the right way. So
Caltrans is going to raise it 2 feet and put the track back on?
The trail contractor, part of the trail contract is to raise the rail prism 2 to 3 feet in areas between Braycut and Arcata Redwood. They're not putting the tracks back. We tried to talk them into it. You know, really the main reason that the Arcata section was built rail with trail and the Eureka section was built rail with trail and the whole rest of the design of the part that's being built rail with trail, the only reason they're even considering the railroad is because of us and our silly little speeder car that we run every other weekend. And, you know, we're really vocal advocates at all these.
So you tried to get them, after they raised it, to put it back?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Decided they wouldn't?
We tried, and we just didn't have the political clout to pull it off.
You're going against the state of
the Great Redwood Trail, and yeah. Anyway, so it's not for lack of trying, but that coupled with the fact that maybe shorter is better. Let's get it going, Samoa to Arcata and back, and get that successful. And then, hey, what if we turned right here and wanted to go towards Eureka, you know? So.
Would that essentially make it a loop?
Well, it can't loop. It'd have to, I mean, it would dead end at the balloon track. And what would happen, how you, if the train pulls up to the, let's say, downtown Eureka, then you have to go into the balloon track where there's a parallel track to get the locomotive off the front of the train, have it bypass and come back and hook up to, so it's on the correct end of the train for the return trip. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I were down Fort Bragg, and we did the skunk train, and those little, what you call rail rider things were really cool looking.
They're
And I
very
think they would
popular.
be a really big draw. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for those.
Yep, that's a fact. They're extremely popular across the country, and excursion trains are finding out, dang, we can maintain a $5,000 rail bike, or we can maintain this $1.5 million steam train. We make a lot more money off the rail bikes than we make off the steam train. So, yeah, I think and just the whole bike riding fitness thing. You know, it's huge. It's green. There's no emissions being outside, and yeah. Yes, sir.
I actually had a question about the museum plans. Is the curatorial content for that upcoming something written, or is that something that's Timber Heritage is working on or to be determined?
That's another good question. We've had several strategic plan studies done, both in-house and paid for. And it's morphed into, you know, depending on board members come and go, people who are passionate advocates for the museum, and after they don't gain any traction for a couple years, they lose their. But if you have any experience whatsoever, we're all volunteers. But yes, we have this amazing site. We got this amazing collection of rusty crap that we're slowly restoring and painting. And every time we turn around, hey, I just roofed that 15 years ago. It already needs a new roof, you know. So it's a lot to take care of, and you know, to present to the public in a museum quality. But yeah, and how to make, where to put the parking, how to make the museum flow, where to put the gift shop, where to, you know, how to make it all work and be functional, and because it certainly wasn't designed and built as a museum, but everybody who goes out there is like, wow, you have an amazing site and an amazing collection. We feel real fortunate.
What's the future of the Samoa Cookhouse?
In talking with Brent at Danco, they had a complete structural study done of the building. Of course, the building's built on a sand dune, and it's like this, and the bathrooms on the back are like this. And so the building itself has a lot of structural issues, and that if you want to dig, it's sand. It's a sand dune, and and that's why it's leaning. They had an extensive study done on what's the kitchen, what if we propped up the building, what's the kitchen need? Well, crud, the kitchen needs, there's some 1800s technology in there they're still using. So the kitchen needs a lot of work. It's all got to be up to health code, et cetera, et cetera. And they were kind of putting Band-Aids on it for years. Actually, the owner of the cookhouse hired me several times to prop things up and help them put the rotten floor back together. And anyway, and Danco's looking at it from a cost, we can't make money on this. Next, what's next? But what that Samoa Cookhouse means to the whole city of Eureka, not only the Samoa Peninsula, but the city. The Maritime Museum, I was just up talking to Don at the Maritime Museum the other day. He said, Pete, on any given weekday, at least 20 cars a day come up, park, look through the windows, looking for the Samoa Cookhouse. I mean, I've been traveling, we go out on ski trips. I've been in Utah. Where do you live? Eureka, where's that? Humboldt, the redwood trees. Where? Samoa Cookhouse. Oh, we know where the Samoa Cookhouse is. I mean, it's world famous. Yeah. And
Well, that was kind of like a museum in itself.
yes, exactly. And we offered to Brent, we said, we are worried about the contents of the cookhouse. If a transient fire underneath the cookhouse, I mean, it'd go up in a heartbeat. We told him, you put a cargo container in the front parking lot, we'll be there with 15 Timber Heritage volunteers. We'll strip the place, put all the valuables, all the museum quality items, all the pictures, everything, put them in a cargo container, just take them away, store them somewhere else, just get them out of the cookhouse until it's rebuilt. So, but we're not done pursuing that.
Is there any possibility it would be the museum for you? Forget the food.
Right.
Food trucks show up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that seems to be the easy way to do things, with the food truck.
There's plenty of room there.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting concept. I don't know if because they were talking about restoring the cookhouse and adding hostel rooms upstairs. Because it's sectioned off into bedrooms upstairs. It was all the kitchen help lived there 24/7. But
So they're renovating the town, and if you go through the town, you see all the foundations, they're putting cement under there. So it would just be too enormous to do the same thing to the Samoa Cookhouse, which is already happening to the town and some of those.
right.
It's just too
Yeah,
enormous.
I don't know. That's a Danco question. I don't know, but Brent just didn't seem real positive that it would pencil out financially.
It's too much money.
Right. But every day that goes by, you're losing that clientele. That drives out there and wonders why they're not open. In 5 years, that clientele is going to forget all about the Samoa Cookhouse, and
The history.
so the sooner it opened up, the better, really.
So it's under Danco's hat.
They own it. Yeah, they own the building. Anyway, anything else, or can we get out of here? That was fun. I'd like to give you all a little something about our Roundhouse Rendezvous. Feel free to take a whistle punk if you're not familiar with it.